Hi, everyone. Welcome. And I am so excited because I'm having a conscious conversation with a beautiful soul, with a dear friend, Frida. Now, why I am so excited for this conversation is because today marks the day that Frida officially steps out of the spiritual closet. And why I am excited for that is because it's such an honor, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to co-create with her in this experience, because when someone really steps more into the core essence, when they speak their truth, when they are expanding, it is such a joy for me to witness. And again, I am just so grateful to have had the experience. And before I get to the film, I just want to share a little bit about her. Frida is an educator, a writer, a filmmaker, a mother, a spiritual traveler, and a natural uplifter. She was born by the fjords of Norway and spent a significant part of her childhood in the Arctic North. Immersed in nature, she felt very connected to the elements: the sea, the wind, the mountains, and the northern lights, whom she considered her friends. This was a beautiful contrast to the religious dogma imposed upon her at home. She left religion and Norway behind at the age of 18, determined to a life pursuing her passions, and has spent large parts of her life abroad, traveling extensively and living in the States, Spain, Holland, and England. Her passions for knowledge resulted in more than a decade of higher education in the fields of film, literature, anthropology, and education before teaching filmmaking in Norway. She has a master's degree in film production from Columbia University and a master's in education from University of Cambridge, where her thesis, Genius, Deep Attention to a Passion, focused on the importance of autistic children being allowed to learn through the pursuing their passions. Inspired traveling, following her heart, intuition, signs, and synchronicities has been one of Frida's favorite passions. As a single mother, she went UFO hunting in the Andes Mountains with her 6-year-old son and 12-year-old brother. El Camino de Santiago revealed the sacred lands to her, and she feels such a profound love for Gaia and her creatures. Connecting through her heart center with the dolphins in Croatia really catapulted her explorations of the quantum field and its infinite potentials for healing, guidance, and expansion. Frida is here to help raise the vibrations, to uplift and inspire others to pursue their passions, and fiercely believes in the power of following your heart's guidance, in letting your life path unfold. With that, I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, here is the video.
Things have been shifting a lot for me.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I were, I'm just going to give you the short story.
Uh-huh.
The place that I was staying at, I was staying with someone, and I've never met them before. I found them upon moving to Florida, and I was Airbnb-ing, and she was one of the Airbnbs, and everything was going great. So I asked if she considered me for like a long-term renter. She agreed to it, and that ended out of nowhere. So I had to find a new place. So for the past, it's basically since I got back from my Utah trip, I've been looking for a place, and I finally found a place. So I was in the process of like getting things kind of set up, moved in, but not just in my living space, but I feel also like so much, so much is shifting, so much is expanding. And, when I think about, it's like a cliche saying about, at least for me, because I just really resonate with this, being in the heart space is such a beautiful compass to have when navigating the unknown. And as much as I emphasize on the heart space, it's really helped me to navigate seemingly like crazy situations and still feel grounded and um, yeah, just trusting in all of it. So that's kind of how I
Yeah,
am.
and that's how you get to that's how we sort of work that muscle, the heart space muscle.
Yes.
By stepping out of that comfort zone. Like sometimes we are pushed out of a new house or
Yeah.
a house to
Yeah.
find a new one, and whether you wanted to or not. But at the same time, I think also what's interesting sometimes with moving space is that you are moving a lot. I mean, you are sort of going into something new because you're ready to go into something new.
Yes, I love that. Look at you, Frida. You're ready just to start creating a YouTube channel and busting out this wisdom. Mm.
I like your glass, like a jar.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Um, what about you? How are you today? And I would love for you to share at the end of it all, like why do you think that talking to me and this potentially being a recording, why is that such a something that is like such a big thing for you?
Well, because I have been very much in the spiritual closet most of my life, I think. And yeah, and this summer, I mean, I've been feeling that pressure to sort of step up, right? And you can't sort of, it's very cozy and warm in that, really safe in that little closet. But then when I had COVID in June, and that was a very interesting, it became a very spiritual experience. It was also a very uncomfortable experience. I'm not trying to minimize it.
Yeah.
It lasted about 10, 11 days. And at the end of it, I felt like I was burning and shifting a lot and sort of clearing. So in that sense, it was very interesting. And I just went with it. Like I had no resistance. I thought to myself, I'm not going to spend 1 calorie of fear producing stress hormones that will make it worse. I'm just going to go with it and explore it and see what it has to offer. And it felt like it was a purging, I guess some would call it. It was just like burning through, like got rid of a lot of old stuff that I didn't need anymore. And by the end of it, the day I felt it shifted, which I think was day 10 or 11, I'm not sure, 11, I got this word restart. And it felt like a restart in life. Like my life now is different than yesterday. It's a new start at my life. And I said, okay, I'm going to step up. It's time. So if anyone asks me, I'm going to say yes. I'm not going to say no anymore.
I
So
love
if
it.
anyone puts me on the spot and happen to be Steven, thankfully, being you, that's
Yeah, thank you.
creating that safe space. It's really lovely.
Thank you. I love that. So, um, I'm trying to think of how I would, I'm trying the best way to word this question. Is there any things that you have done, whether consciously or unconsciously, to kind of prepare for stepping out of the closet? Or are you the type that I'm just gonna jump over it and I will deal with it while I'm falling, so to speak? Or
I don't like to fall.
okay. So
Not in
there's
this matter. I've done a lot of falling. I've done jumping out of cliffs, not literally, but I've done a lot of that things that maybe some would call brave. But for me, it wasn't that brave. But this is this takes more bravery.
Oh, I love it.
I think it's just how you perceive things, really. For others, this is nothing. Especially if you like being on a stage or you like attention, then this is welcoming
Yeah.
to come out.
Well, I am so grateful that our paths have crossed and that I am the one to be a catalyst in you stepping more out of your spiritual closet, because every time I hear you talk and every time I've experienced you, I just think to myself, what a profound being that you are. And I could feel too that it's just, I'm actually surprised that this is something for you. And I feel like I can already see you, if, however your service unfolds even more as you step more and more out. I can already see you putting out videos or way sharing to people of wisdom that you've gained over your experience. And I just think you're such a natural talker. And even though that you're from, is it
Norway.
Norway? Okay. I think your English is excellent. So I think you're ready.
But thank you. I went to a palm reader when I was 25, and he said something really interesting. So he was like, yeah, your father sort of disappeared out of your life when you were 3 years old. I'm like, well, that kind of is true, right? And then it's like, I don't know how to put this. And I could see that he did, he was like battling himself. It's like you were brainwashed from age 3, 4 until 17.
Oh, wow.
But you were not completely free of it until you were 21. And I just started laughing. I seriously started laughing because he was so worried, So I was also worried what he was going to say. And I thought, I never thought about it like that. But yeah, that is so true. Like so black and white, And I think that's across the board with any religion, people who are very dedicated to religion and parents doing their best raising the child in that religion. He said they don't understand that a child don't have the mental maturity to interpret and understand the teachings that are meant for adults. And it can go quite high wire madness, It can go quite wrong, which I think sort of I had a lot of issues with this, but at the same time, because I was so much on my own, I was a bit of a Pippi Longstocking. I had a lot of autonomy, and I was living in nature in the Arctic, with beautiful nature. And we had like reindeers and go walking, outside. And I would have to sometimes walk through a flock of reindeers on my way to school, or even when I was younger, like the first time I think I was 4 years old, and I thought that was so big and so scary. And my mom said, no, but they are more scared than you. So if you walk towards them, they will part like Moses, the Red Sea. And they did, So I felt very connected with nature. I loved the nature. There was like a lake and a river and a mountain. I was just drift around on my own. And, I realized that I was I felt that everything was alive. So when I started reading at age 5, I started reading these books about, those are the days of the Korean Indians. So the Indian books, they spoke about the Great Spirit and everything being alive. And I, that resonated with me. So I think that was like a healthy balance.
Yes. Wow, that's so fascinating. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I would just say most people in religion, and there's nothing negative about, I'm not putting down religion, but they're well intended. But as we know, like the brainwash is so real, and you sort of get out of balance of being so much of a fanatic that you become almost like you're contradicting on what you're preaching. And I remember being told that if you weren't doing exactly what the church was telling you to do, everything else was of the devil. And I even remember being told that the devil worked with the water. So here I am, like trying to take quick showers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that one, thankfully. Wow.
Yeah. So that's obviously like a programming, whoever told me that, because when I think about it, I know like the whole, being baptized in the lake or water, and because I was baptized, I think when I'm not sure what the age is for that.
8.
That's what I was going to say, but I didn't know for sure. So there's so much programming, and I think even though people are well intended, they see the likes. I think ultimately we're all seeking that. We come in to experience the 3D, the duality, separating ourselves from source, and then like we get a little glimpse of, oh, like there's something more out there. There's God, there's Jesus, there's love. We're just like, yes, we don't know why, but we know this resonates with us, and we're willing to follow steps or whatever, how it's being presented. And it's interesting because after experiencing this, similarly as I was awakening, I call it the savior complex. I started experiencing that where like I wanted to tell everyone about, like all that I was uncovering, and I wanted to like, you got to just check this out. And then I like had this moment of laughing, like, wow, here I am becoming like a Mormon preaching.
Missionary.
Yeah.
On a mission to save them all.
Yeah. And then it came back full circle. I was like, wow, okay, that was the first time of, okay, I'm no longer judging anyone, because at that time I kind of had like a judgment, like, oh, you're Mormon, oh God, you're one of those. Now I'm not judging anyone, whatever you believe, it's all perfect and it's all beautiful, and I know at the end of the day we're well intended in our actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody, at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the best we can. And sometimes that runs havoc on our own lives and other lives, but we don't understand that at the time, because maybe we are driven by these subconscious programming or fears, or
So if you were speaking to like a whole audience of people who were like, let's say somehow you knew this telepathically, but no one was sharing this, but a whole audience of people who are ready to come out of the closet, maybe they've had the same background as us, or whatever the reason is, what advice would you give them?
I have to step out of that closet first, don't I?
Okay, so how?
No, but really, I think I guess at one point you just have to step out. Like you have to get out of that comfort zone, and you just have to. It's like a balance. I feel it's like a balance, right? So you have to be comfortable enough that when you do step up, that you can take what comes. If you're sort of, oh no, the balance. Okay, I don't know how to word to explain the balance. It's like, okay, so it's almost with anything. So say you would really like to learn how to jump out of a plane, like parachuting, right? But you have this fear of heights. So I don't recommend you doing that then until the desire to jump out that plane, that desire to be floating in the air gets bigger and overwhelms the anxiety of stairs or of heights.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, the tipping point. Like when the desire to do something is greater than the fear, that's the time to jump. Either that or something moves you so that you feel that something else is more important. Like if you feel that somebody really needs to hear that for their good, then you can sort of forget yourself and you can do it, because then you're not so self-conscious.
I love that. I think that right there is such a key to, I don't want to say the path, because that indicates there's only one way, but like when we step out of the way, just as you just shared, like when you forget yourself to bring through whatever is highest and best, whoever's in the moment, that has been my formula nowadays. Whenever I am talking to someone, whether I'm speaking to a group, and this is also kind of coupled with becoming one, strengthening your connection with our higher selves. And because as you step to the side, that I guess I should say the ego side, the fear, all of that is gone for that moment, and you're just bringing through beautiful wisdom with whatever is meant to be shared in that now moment.
Yeah, I agree, exactly. And those moments are magical.
Yes. Yeah.
That's when the magic is created, because the magic is created. You have to get out of the comfort zone to create magic, because when you're inside your comfort zone, there is no need for magic. You have to sort of step out and risk something for that magic to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where the growth is.
Yeah, exactly.
How can you grow if you're just still experiencing the same thing you've experienced?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the wisdom that you shared about when you're explaining the balancing. Like if you were giving advice to someone who is going to come out of the closet, there needs to be that balance. For I can just say firsthand, I learned the hard way. I was way out of balance with my experiences. One example is I was awakening, and um, I was very much tuning into like how the ego's been very dominant in our life, how the ego is the one that wants like the fancy cars and to look good and to impress others. So what I decided to do is on the spot, I like shaved my eyebrows, shaved my head, and I was like, let me just see if I don't care what people think about me. And there's been many other cases where like I went on the extreme side of things, and then now as I come back to it, I'm like, wow, I feel like the best way to go about it personally is to go nice and balanced, little by little, and not like jump in over your head. Granted, it can work, but it's unnecessary, and it's definitely it takes an individual, a special individual, to navigate it and not actually spiral backwards into like feeling whatever people can get caught up in.
Yeah. And at the same time, that was a very valuable experience.
Yeah.
This is why you are not doing it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. It comes back to that beautiful truth that everything is so perfectly and divinely orchestrated, no matter what, even like the trials, if you will, or the challenges in our life, because it makes us who we are.
Yeah, and I think, growing up the way we did
Mm-hmm,
in terms of there are these trials to be worthy of something, right? That leaves the programming, which is sort of hard to check out the window subconsciously. And that's why I like to think that you can't get it right, you can't get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good, at the end of the days, which is sort of the opposite, I think, of that. Like you don't have to sort of prove yourself through these tests. I don't believe in that. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any testing going on, and no,
Yeah.
it's all experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can't really get it right, you can't get it wrong, because if you see it in the big scope of many lifetimes and the universe, and we're here for a little fraction of a second, so
Yeah.
it really don't matter that much. What matters is what you can draw from it. The silver, the ability to see the silver lining. That's how we gain wisdom. Is chucking the self-judgment out the window.
Yeah.
And say, look about it a little bit objectively on the side, like, oh, this is really interesting. Like why she's going through all these motions, like, oh, that's interesting. Like what's going on? And, like, what can I learn from this?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's beautiful. It's basically the way I say it is that all truths are truths. It just depends on the perspective you're viewing it from. So there's no reason to say my way is the right way and your way is the wrong way. But what I have kind of viewed perspectives like such as what you just shared is this is the higher self perspective, the bigger picture perspective, where there's no judgment at all, there's no self criticism, there's no needing to prove yourself, there's just experiences. And um, I feel like the journey more comes, for me, it's no longer what's the right way or the wrong way. It's just what resonates with me. And and I think this goes back to saying, this is why, like, for anyone who's starting their journey, it's always to start within themselves, because once you have worked on yourself and you know who you are, and if you're in the heart, then when it comes going back to saying what resonates with me is what's in resonance with my intention. And I'm a heartfelt being. I wanted to embody my highest and best self, to be in the greatest service of all seen and unseen. Then it's easy to see that, like, for me, drinking no longer resonates with me, or for me, fighting someone no longer resonates with me. War never doesn't resonate with me. And it's a way of navigating it kind of going back to the balancing example
Yeah.
you gave. It's you're in the middle, you're neutral, so it's there's more grace and ease on the path.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, when I left the church at 17, I did a huge rebellion to be able to get out. And for a moment there was because now there was no God watching over me, right? My way out of the church was turning into atheism. I think it lasted like half a year or something. But anyway, part of it, was atheism, just like this huge relaxation and relief that after death, there's nothing. So I have nothing to worry about, right? But being so used to God being the one that, keeping you on track, so that God, he will see whatever you do. Then all of a sudden there was no, I was so boundaryless. Like whether you lie or steal or murder, you know what I mean? Like taking it to, I didn't know that I did that. But I mean, taking it to extreme when you have brought up that somebody's watching you and that's what you're not doing it. You haven't internalized your own moral system. I hadn't anyway. So I had to sort of like work through that on my own through the next few years, finding my moral core. No, I don't murder anyone because, lying, well, that, no, stealing, no, I had to sort of like finding my own navigation, internal moral compass. And now I lost track why I even said that. What did you say now?
I was just saying, like, this is all having the higher perspective of no longer,
Yeah. And then, that's when and then you sort of end up with many similar things. Me too. Drinking doesn't really resonate with me. And I gave up coffee with COVID because I felt that I'm too much into coffee, and it's good for me, not for my body. It's like I'm so sensitive that I don't need that stimuli, So it's funny, but it's self-chosen.
Yes. Yeah. And
it's not because somebody tells you have to do something.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think also when you get to that place, the need for rules, you don't really have any needs for rules. If everybody would follow their own inner compass, sort of like do to others what you would like them to do to you kind of compass, I think there would be very little stealing or wars and all these kind of bad things would sort of fall away because nobody really wants that.
There's this saying that I really loved. It's similar to what you just shared, which is actually this is a quote given by a guy named Sadhguru, and if you know anything about him, he's running so many he's doing a lot for humanity, but basically he has like 10 million volunteers, and people are always asking him, like, we're running these Fortune 5,000 whatever they're saying is companies, and yet you just have volunteers. How is it that your things are running so smoothly? And he shared that no one likes to be managed, but everyone longs to be included. And so it kind of goes to saying that if everyone is, no one's being told what to do, and if they find their moral compass and they're doing what they want to do, the resistance, the grind, the stress, all that stuff that we've been experiencing goes away, and you just have a bunch of sovereign, loving beings doing what they're doing, and it creates an atmosphere unlike any that we, comparing it to being told what to do. You need to follow the church, you need to pray, you need to do this and this. Not to say any of that's bad, but there's a dramatic feeling and difference, and it just feels so great, like you just shared.
Yeah. And control, religion essentially, I think, is about controlling the masses or controlling people. Or that's an important aspect of it. There's a power aspect of it from leaders controlling, and I'm not saying every leader is like that, but I mean it has accumulated. Well, for me, spirituality is going inwards and not controlling anyone except yourself, and you don't have that need. And then, yeah, absolutely.
Well, isn't it interesting that we're sharing about, being sovereign, finding your own moral compass, doing what, resonates with you, and that would be considered sinning to the church. It's like, no, you need to do it our way. Otherwise, the devil's, playing with you, and you're going to go to hell. And it's very interesting. I've journeyed this in a very non-judgmental way. I call it like the 0 point, but it's really fascinating. And when you look at when religion was brought up, how it was brought up, why the intention of religion, it very much aligns with control and manipulation, taking parts of truth that have come through, like beautiful beings like Jesus. Just because we're talking about Mormons, I'm going to just leave it there for an example of these beings. But as we know, Buddhism was created after Buddha. But so that I think there's beautiful truths that are taken, but they surround it with so much control, manipulation. So there's parts of us that's like, this feels right, so I'm not going to question the manipulation and fall in line. And oftentimes, other than praying, but even praying, it's directed you giving you looking outside yourself. And whereas from my understanding and my limited experience, it's all about going within and experiencing things that we just touched on, being sovereign, finding your moral compass, being in your heart. And yeah, so it's been interesting seeing all of this and having been part of it.
Yeah. And I think many religions have that aspect as part of their tradition. Like the Muslims have Sufism, the Jewish have the Kabbalah, and even I didn't know, but Protestantism also has a mystic tradition, because I was doing research on a woman that lived in the 1600s, and who was, she wasn't involved in the witch hunts, but she sort of was involved anyway. But anyway, when she was arrested, she was from Denmark, but she lived in Christiania, which was Oslo at the time. Her husband was a doctor. And so when they arrested her, they made a list of all the inventory and the library. And in their library was many books that was actually forbidden by the Protestants, and it was Protestant mysticism. And I had no idea that actually existed. I mean, you have it in the Catholics; they have their mysticism.
Yeah.
And the Mormons, I think they don't have much of that. I think that originally they had it. They used to have it, but it's sort of been washed away. But I wouldn't I'm not sure. But if you think about the modern day Mormonism, the way I was raised or know it anyway, it's all about the beehive and producing and doing and really and following the rules and reading and praying and not really going much inward. It's more outward worship and keeping busy, so you don't have time to go inwards too much. Because I think when you go inwards, you lose control of people. And that sounds like a mean thing to say, but I mean in general, when we start going inward and we realize who we are, we are not really, we don't need the control, and we don't have any interest in being controlled or being part of any control system.
No, you hit the nail right on the head. I remember in Utah before moving to Florida. So I'm on my awakening, and I resonated with the saying that, how in the Mormon, I think it's the Bible, but they say that Jesus is going to come back. And I remember the saying that I heard upon awakening was that, and I'm revising it the way I would say, Christ consciousness is coming back, but not in one being. It's in all of us who choose to step into that. And I remember at this point in time, I felt the calling to come out of the closet, and kind of tying into like, okay, so why am I feeling embarrassed to share my truth if asked? Because a lot of people would ask me like, so like, what's your felt sense on this? Or, somehow be brought in, and I would feel embarrassed and like, choose an answer that I know they would like. So long story short, they knew I created this reputation of being the meditation man. I would go to this park every day. My dog would sit next to me. She would just sit. I didn't even train her to do it, but she would just sit next to me. Like, so people were coming to me left and right and just ask me questions. And I remember sharing that truth. Like, well, they asked me, and I said, well, I believe that Jesus is not coming back in one form, that we're all resurrecting the Christ consciousness if we choose to step into it. And I'll never forget that moment of feeling like my heart racing, like, oh my God, what are they going to say? And I was so thankful and grateful that even though these people are very Mormon, they were open-minded and they took it with such ease. And they're like, oh, okay. And I can't remember how it took over that, but that was just one moment of coming out of the closet for me that I'm so
An
great.
empowering
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Speaking your truth,
Yeah.
which really resonates with me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I mean, staying with that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know the patriarchal blessing?
Yes. Yes.
Like it's the one blessing you get directly from God, and you
Yes.
can receive it from age around 12 normally or on.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got that message, that blessing, I read it in my diary just because you're supposed to keep diaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I read it. I had written about it in my diary because I don't have that blessing anymore. But in that blessing, it was said that God would require my youth from me, but that if I kept on the narrow path, I will be working alongside Christ in the when he returns, something like that. And that was kind of exceptional. Like my mom made a big deal out of it, and I don't think that was quite normal. Like my friend who got her, she got like, yeah, you will have a husband and a kids in the married in the temple. I got that too, right? But
Yeah.
that that I will actually be working with Christ when he returns was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a big and a very confirmation that I was like this very special person in the church kind of thing, Well, I didn't tell you, but when I was 10, we moved from the Arctic down to Oslo, the capital. So then finally we were in a ward with other kids my age. It was fantastic. I was part of a community, and because I was raised by my mom, I was so much ahead of them gospel wise, because she had really raised me well. But anyway, so I got that, and of course that makes it, when you leave the church, that makes it so much more serious if you're wrong, that you're in the outer darkness, while you could have had a very important mission working alongside Christ when he returns. But later on I thought about it, and I think now I'm thinking, well, maybe that was like an important message that came through that they didn't understand, but it's connected to what you're talking about, which is the Christ consciousness. The heart space and the heart technology and
Yeah.
something like, oh, God works in mysterious ways.
Yes, exactly.
Universe. I prefer to say source and universe and God. I find God a little loaded, too much baggage there.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, isn't it, that no matter how we sort of live or get raised, these like stuff will come through that will be important.
Yes.
That seed planted, because that of course made me very aware about God, by Jesus, and and having a special purpose next to Jesus somehow.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I mean, just one example, like a little off topic, is that I remember upon awakening, up until that point, like I thought I was going to be in the military. I played a lot of I played a lot of video games. I played a lot of like board games that are, I guess you call it, like a most popular version of it that I'm referring to is called Dungeons and Dragons. But essentially, I always when I was going to be in the military, I wanted to be a medic. When I played video games, I wanted to be the healer. So there was a common thread of this, and that when I awoke, for some reason, when I was like, I put out my intention, like, okay, like, how can I step more into my service? Like, what do I want to do? Like, what resonates with me? All of a sudden, I just remembered like these little patterns that were dropped in when I was asleep, and it's landed me today with my services that I offer. So yeah, I 100% agree that it's so
It's
beautiful to
fascinating.
see all of
Yeah.
that.
And then you start feeling that it's all meant to be, that you
Yes.
are on the path, of
Yeah.
becoming. And this is, I very much feel I'm on a path of becoming. I don't know where it's heading. It's like expanding forever.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful thing to mention that for me anyways, right now,
Mm.
I think so often that we don't know where we're going, but we can just feel that we're on a path. And I think this is the difference between being so in your mind or being in your heart, because the mind is the one that wants to draw conclusions and
Mm-hmm.
wants to understand, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the heart, when you're in the heart, it's just there's so much trust that there's no need to know where you're going. There's
Yeah.
just then and there is such joy of being in the moment, and that from moment to moment, being the best of your abilities, you just know that you're going to get to wherever you're going to need to go, and
Yeah.
and there's no, as scary as that sounds to those who would like to have control over wanting to know where they're going to go, there's actually such profoundness and such freedom in that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I agree. And for me, I shouldn't use the word battle. So maybe it's the last time but it's like a battle of my heart and my head.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because I love to understand. I have a very inquisitive mind. I
Mm,
really like to understand everything, and sometimes that
yes.
takes over. Uh, but it's really interesting. It's the heart space that sort of, it's the heart space when that takes over. I mean, sometimes it can take over without me necessarily not planning it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, again, this is only us, right? But
Yeah.
like when I was in Spain last year, it everybody was saying when I arrived that it hadn't been raining that winter, and it's like it was a severe drought, and it hadn't been raining. And I'm not sure. Maybe after a week or two, I'm walking on the street, and I just thought to myself, it needs to rain. And it's like I shot out through my heart into like this intention
Mm,
that I don't know. I don't even know what I said. I just did it. And I didn't even plan on doing it. It was just like, it needs to rain now. And that afternoon, it rained. I was like, and part of me was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And the other part of me was like, yeah, but of course, and I don't know which one it is.
yes.
I don't know. It's like, did I actually summon the rain,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
or were there rain in the cloud, like were there like clouds that
mm-hmm,
I helped summoning, or
mm-hmm.
did I actually just like intuitively know that it was going to
Yes.
rain and I sent it out? You know what I mean? I don't know, but I
Yes.
know that I just stopped in my track. I literally stopped in the street. I said, "No, now. It needs to rain," and I
Mm-hmm.
just shot it out through my heart, and then it rained the next day. And I think it rained. Then it was like a few days of rain or something. I mean, not continuously, but yeah, I only did it then. And I think if I did it here and now, I say, okay, we need rain. It wouldn't work. It was then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, there's so many things that just came in. I first of all, I love that. And um, before I say what I want to say is this is actually I felt really. Do you know who Dr. Joe Dispenza is? Um, I still don't know fully what, I mean, I do know, I didn't dive too deep, but the whole mind and heart coherence I really resonated with, and kind of what you're sharing. Like, I think there is a balancing point of still using the mind, but also using the heart. And there's places when you want to understand things. There's also places where you just surrender into the unknown, kind of a thing. Um, I think it's so funny. Everything is coming full circle back to the example you gave. It's all about being in balance, in my opinion, not shutting something off. And anyways, completely. Um, what I would like to share, this is going to be seemingly controversial to a lot of people because I mean, I honestly don't know. I've only know one other person who um, resonates with this truth, and I don't even want to say a truth. We'll just say potential. And that person, as we both know them, is Marina Jacobi. And essentially, what I love that your story about, the rain and the intention coming from the heart in that experience, I truly believe that as long as we're still, giving our power to tuning into the Weather Channel or our phones or whatever it is to like determine how our reality is going to experience with what weather, that whatever they're projecting is going to be your reality. But when you come more into an empowerment and you realize that we are aspects of source experiencing the human, and just because like that, we also have the ability to create anything we want. And again, this goes depending on how much you 100% believe that you can create situations where, like you just experienced, when you could call the rain, or if they're I remember very clearly the example that Marina gave is that it was all raining and she used her protocol with those who are around her, and they got it to everyone around the house, in the house, who they were swimming. They knew how to the alchemy of reality, and only on her property it was not raining. And when her husband came in, she was saying like, "You're not going to believe this, but like it's pouring out here, and our house is the only house that's not being rained on." Like, so these miracles or these phenomena, I think more and more I'm realizing it's very much a thing that we can experience. It's just a matter of consciously and with the heart tapping into that. And obviously there's well, that's going down a whole another rabbit hole. But
no, but it makes sense, because
yeah,
if I can just tip this in before the rabbit hole,
yeah.
because when I did that, I had no attachment. Like I
Mm,
hadn't been walking around worrying about the rains and the mango
yes.
trees and avocado trees not getting I had nothing of that, because it
Hmm.
didn't really affect me. I was just there for a few months,
Hmm.
and but I just felt that the land needed rain. So let's get to it.
Exactly.
And it was a land I was thinking about, the land around, like, we
Hmm.
need rain now, please.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
didn't even say please, I think. But I mean, I had no
Yeah.
attachment, and it was just this certainty. Like there was
Yes.
no doubt, and there was not a big deal, and it was just something that I did.
Hmm.
Now, if I would have contemplated it and worried and wondered how to do this, none of it would have happened. That's how it feels like to me.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's why I can't necessarily recreate it at will either. It was like something I could do then,
Yeah.
and maybe I can do it another time. But I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know how that happens. I mean, I had another one where I was standing by the ocean down there, and I was speaking to the ocean,
Hmm.
and I was it was just me, and it's a little bit it was just me on the beach because it's winter, so it was lovely. And then I could like shout, in a nice way, like really like use my voice to call on the water consciousness and whatever. And then it felt like the water responded, like the waves got bigger
Hmm.
for without any increase of wind, or without any boats coming, it just by itself. And I was like, oh, thank you for responding. I was so excited.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it just felt very natural, you know and that's really, it's really quite fascinating
Mm,
that we can commune with the elements, that we have that they
yes.
respond.
I love that you shared that, because that is, in my opinion, that's the so to speak, the bread and butter of when it comes to stepping into who we truly are and embodying it, doing things that seem natural to you, like something like that, just going out to the ocean, speaking to it, and having that experience. Um, that is I'm trying to put this correctly, like that is the path of the most with the most grace and ease in embodying that. Because I think when I woke up, we hear that meditation, yoga, the traditional things that like this is the way you can, these are ways that you can embody. And for some people, when they go into that, it might not feel as natural. It might be over efforted, and so like they can get into this process of doing it, and they're not enjoying it, not seeing results, and kind of being like, what's going on? But simply just following your heart, going out to the ocean, that whole thing you did there, that is equivalent of meditating or doing yoga, but that was specifically tailored and resonating for you. And
Absolutely.
these things will stack up for you paving your own path of embodiment. And I think that's so beautiful because when we wake up, I think we still have a little bit of the follow the herd kind of mentality, like, okay, yoga, meditation, all this is what's traditionally done. Let me do this. But when you branch out and do what resonates with you, everything just like, I think that's like the quick path, if you will, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. And to be honest, like if I find meditation tradition a little bit boring, so that hasn't been really my path that much. Guided meditations, yeah, but my own sitting there on myself, it's like, oh gosh. But and also what I would say about the standing by the ocean, it was all about appreciation of the ocean, the gratitude. I love the ocean so much, and I was sharing my love for the ocean. And I was like thanking the ocean, thanking life, and just creating one of those, appreciation moments. I could say gratitude, but I think Abraham Hicks had this wonderful, they sort of ruined gratitude for me because they put them up against each other. And gratitude, there's almost like an element of appreciation is more pure. Appreciation is above gratitude. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like with gratitude, there's something negative or something painful or something that you have overcome sort of in that or something, while appreciation is just pure appreciation.
Yeah, that makes me think about, are you familiar with the gene keys?
Not very much, but they keep popping up. Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, basically, as you just gave that analogy of gratitude and appreciation, each gene key has, I think you have the shadow side. Let's say the shadow is like arrogance. And then you would have I can't remember the actual titles for it, but in the middle one would be gratitude. And then the city, which is when you master it all the way, it's what was it again that you said? Appreciation. So this kind of like the evolution of the three. And so when you just shared that the appreciation is above gratitude, that's kind of reminds me of how the gene key works and what they
so do they also have appreciation above gratitude?
I don't know, but I know that's kind of like the similar format they have, where there's one that's like a higher resonance, if you will, above them all, and it's like the evolution of it.
And I think it's all in the mind, how we feel things. But for me, after hearing that, gratitude sort of was almost chucked out the window. I mean, I use it sometimes, but sometimes it's more fitting. But in general, I appreciate appreciation more because it feels higher. It feels more pure. There's no pain in it. It's just pure appreciation. Yeah. But it's it's my mind. It's not the word. It's what we add to it. The energy we add to it.
Because you brought up the mind, and we've talked about this a little ways back, but when I first woke up, I was like diving into reading all the books, watching all of the spiritual videos. Like I was very fascinated with getting all this knowledge, and I still am today. That hasn't stopped, but I will share that the way I almost look at knowledge is what is outside of us, and the wisdom is what's within. And so I've shifted from needing to know and wanting to gain all the knowledge and just start really bringing in and tapping into this inner wisdom, because we are all connected to the same sources where these authors or these beings tap into to present that knowledge we're tuning into. So might as well cut out the middleman and go right to the source. And a profound statement that I really resonate with, that I been on my journey of embodying more, is I know nothing so I can know everything.
Yeah.
And beautiful. I don't know what it is. I was like, yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know nothing so I know everything. Yes, I love it. Yes, it's truly, and I've been like you, reading and listening to a lot of different spiritual teachers and learning a lot. And and all that. But what I've noticed is increasingly it's like I have this Teflon brain that things don't stick. Sometimes I started wondering if I'm becoming senile, you know. It's like I think I'm a little premature, but it's something about that when you go within and start exploring, you learn things on a different level because you feel it. And then that creates a knowing at a higher level than just memorizing or just understanding something intellectually.
You just sparked this whole thing. This is how I see the evolution of how our kids are going to learn for these higher vibrational communities and so forth. And if you take in consideration to how the school systems are set now, where it's really predominantly around like, as long as you can remember what has been shared to you, you're going to get past this flying colors, versus as we evolve, it's like feeling into it. And just how you just explained it so beautifully, I think this is all part of the evolution, you know, becoming more sovereign, coming more within, not needing to be told what to do, no longer needing the control and manipulation, and really stepping more into the creative aspect potential, and having it radiate out for the betterment of all, rather than the opposite, which we have experienced in the third dimensional perspective.
Yeah. And actually, I did a master's at Cambridge in the UK about because I was teaching and I was feeling that this is not working out. You know, we need to revolutionize the schooling system or something. And at the time, I thought introducing more arts, like using arts to teach. For example, you use theater to teach languages, music to teach math and all that. So I thought like introducing more arts, teaching through the arts, not just teaching art, but using art to teach subjects, that was something that needed to be introduced instead of this endless focus on passing tests and, you know. But what was interested to me was alternative education. So that was sort of what I was diving into, different kinds of alternative educations, like Sudbury Valley model. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I can give you like a 2-minute. So Sudbury Valley, very interesting method. It's a school in Massachusetts originally, and that's why it's called Sudbury, because it was in Sudbury Valley. But they offer no subjects. They offer no prompting. The teachers are there and the kids are there, and the kids can do whatever they want. So if they want to sit there and play video games all day, or they want to hang out in the trees all day, that's what there's nobody telling you what to do. And there's nobody sort of like nudging you to do anything. Like it has to be self-driven. That's the essence of it. Has to be self-driven. And also they do offer some debating classes and stuff, not classes, but debating clubs. Again, if you want to join, you join. If not, you don't. And it's like a democratic. So it's a school democracy. So every rule is anyone, you or me, or, you know, any kid or any teacher can launch a rule, suggestion for a rule, and then they will debate it, and then we vote on it on a meeting. So the rules are being changed after all, you know, and the headmaster, if they even have one, and the youngest kid, they have one vote each, so it's all equal. And so it's really the kids are finding their way, because they are finding what best. They will try different stuff and they will hang out, and it's really a fascinating education, I think. And the idea is that we all have this inner, if we are allowed, our inner will come out and choose our path, and we will learn what we are interested in, and we will do so much better, right? And then you have like Montessori and Waldorf school, and you have all these, then you have home education and unschooling and wild schooling and all these kind of different modalities. And also I did study some educational history, and that's and I just really became very radicalized. By the end of it, I was like, we got to chuck this out. There's nothing, we cannot build, it's not enough to reform on a core which is completely rotten. The educational system is based, the mass educational system is based on Prussia in the 1800s, and there was a Johannes Fichte or something, a German philosopher, who gave a speech. He was watching how Napoleon was butchering the Prussian soldiers and how they sort of deserted and lost. And he realized for Prussia to be able to regain its independence, they will need soldiers that are 100% loyal and will follow orders. And he had these, he gave out like a speech on how to do this, which was basically that you remove the kids from the parents and to put them in an institution and you sort of like open their heads and stuff them with the proper knowledge, and you divide everything into subjects so that people don't see the links. They think that everything is separated. And then you only have like 1 hour class of each. And then you have like a bell to sort of like cut it up so that you don't get too deep into it, you don't get too interested, because basically you are training soldiers. And then 10% of the kids, they're going to get a different education. They are going to be taught to be leaders, to sort of to deal with the 90% will be soldiers. So they will be the officers. So that you have to train them in the sense that they will give orders and not be bothered by empathy. And it's like a hardcore thing, because you have to like send these out to war and stuff like that, basically. So like a few years later, they implemented that in Prussia as the first mass schooling, and then the British implemented it. They borrowed it they were part of that industrial revolution, and they needed now kids to sort of be willing to be at the assembly line. And then the Americans implemented it, and before that the Japanese implemented it. We know the Japanese, they're soldiers, they're really like hardcore following the orders. So basically it was like implemented by the whole world, more or less. And that's like the core essence of the educational systems that we have. And yeah, so when I started really realizing all that, I thought to myself, this is we need something completely new. Yep. Which is what you're talking about. And I think we have this, like everybody has this genius inside, like we're all unique. And if we were truly allowed to follow our passions from a young age, we will naturally gravitate towards what we would do well through our passions. And that's how we can contribute. Because no matter how much math I had in school, I remember how to add and subtract and multiply and whatever the other one is called. I still struggle with percentage, It's like I have to do it the old way. So it was like, how many years did it take me to learn that? Maybe 1 year. How many years did I have to have math in school? And all of that wasted time. Well, somebody else would have mathematics and go off to Cambridge afterwards. They should have had so much more of it. And if you look at the geniuses, the official geniuses in the world, like Einstein, Niels Bohr, Newton, Bacon, I mean, they were all homeschooled. They were all basically, and even if they were not homeschooled, they didn't spend that much time in school. They had enough time on their own to pursue their own interests. And I got off on a ramble. I'm sorry, but I feel strongly about this. And I just think that there's so much time wasted on kids, and really not being able to pursue what they should be pursuing. In my naive belief, I think that if we all were allowed to follow our natural interests, the chips will fall out pretty much perfect. Because not everybody wants to be a mathematician, not everybody wants to be a healer or academic or a nurse or a photographer, So you will have, or economist or whatever, you will have those with natural inclinations doing this. And some people will still clean, probably. I mean, I've met cleaners that love cleaning. There's nothing wrong about cleaning. You know what I mean? But why? Well, you get the drift.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that in, and I'm so grateful that you connected things for me, because I just knew intuitively like there's such a manipulation and control in the schooling system. I mean, arguably in all areas of our system. But one of the things that dropped in when you were sharing, like how you had the idea of like, or maybe it might have not been your idea, but you shared that like to teach language with dancing or with drama or and you know
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then music to teach. I love that because those are all, when it comes to when we understand that the masculine energies in this planet have been dominated the feminine energies. And when you talk about shifting into the golden age of Aquarius and all this stuff, this is the resurrection and the balancing of the divine feminine and the masculine. And as you just shared so eloquently, the schooling system and a lot of our systems is so dominated with the masculine way of being. And so to incorporate more of the feminine way of being will help balance this out. And what you just shared was so beautiful, to participate in drama to learn something, or listen to music to learn something. And I was just thinking, like, I'm loving, because I'm just seeing your genius just come out, and I'm really excited to see the evolution of humanity. I'm excited to see like how you you further roll out your genius, and because it's much needed, as you just shared, like this goes deep, and just as they know and as we both know, the kids are our future. And so it's time to, and I agree with you, it's time to let them follow their passion and let the chips land, and it's going to be all perfect. And that's going to be the huge shift. I think there's like people like us are like way sharing, kind of preparing. But I think when the kids start to get, the mass of the kids are in this high vibrational state of being, that's when, in my opinion, we're going to see such huge shifts worldwide of, I guess could be considered a perspective of shifting from the 3D to the 5D or whatever. Because it's just, I can just imagine the ripple effect on how that would just manifest in all areas of our society. Kids just doing what they were wanting to do.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And what is also fascinating that I learned with school history or the educational history, that England has actually a tradition of alternative education, which is quite fascinating, because they've had this hierarchy, with the aristocracy. And so they have people with means who were liberal, who didn't want their children to go through the standardized education or whatever. And so they had these private schools that were for the affluent mostly, but they were also doing experiments with working class kids. And then it turned out the working class kids did as well as the rich kids, and that became a problem. So it got closed down because some didn't like that. But anyway, I think it's so beautiful how throughout the 1900s they will have experimentation with alternative education, that we can actually look at it today and look at that and say, wow, they were onto something. Back then they were onto something. And you can, there's been like the oldest democratic school in the world, which is Summerhill in England. So what they would do is that they offered classes, so it was quite traditional, the subject, but it was all up, the kids could choose to do it or not. So they could do whatever they wanted, but if they chose to attend a class, they would put their name on the door, and then they had to go there. So you had kids from there who never graduated from, they basically hung out with the carpenter, the what do you call the person that's sort of the maintenance guy? They hang out with the maintenance guy. So they were learning from him whatever they were doing. So, and you had even one kid who basically didn't learn how to read. He left at 16 without knowing how to read. But then they've done interviews with these people afterwards. I think he went there in the 60s or so. And this guy, he just ended up traveling the world and doing a lot of different things, because, he had that belief in himself, I think, that he had got from being in this school where you are sort of supported to do what you want to do. So he didn't know how to read, but he knew, he was probably a very handy guy, maybe. And then by the time he got to Australia, by now he was so tired of not knowing how to read, Imagine taking planes without knowing how to read. You have to ask for everything. So basically he taught himself to read. But he has started like several communities in his life, and he's done a lot of things. And it's something that we think that we have to go through this path of progression, right? We have to go to school, we have to learn this and that, we have to do this and that, and then we can choose what to do. But it's not necessarily the case. So it's really beautiful when you have this over time, that they have this history, and where you can actually interview people and see how successful they were in their lives. And some of them actually economically very successful, and others not so. But I mean, it didn't matter. But they were all had this sovereignty and autonomy, and really happy to have gone to this place, to this school. So it's quite interesting because you have it almost creates templates for what's possible. Although it's not perfect, it's a way shower.
Yes, exactly.
So I think they're like the unschooling trends now, which is growing, and I think thanks to Corona, many families, they were stuck in the house, and they were realizing that actually it takes less time to learn when you're at home, and you have more time to do other stuff, and you can still even follow the school curriculum, because when you're in school, everybody has to learn the same thing. Say 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 people in a class, that takes so much longer than if you're just on your own, or 2-3 people learning.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I saw the Corona. I saw the positive in it. Not to take away from anyone's experiences for being, if they had a bad experience, but it definitely was a catalyst. People can actually start to go within, because people weren't allowed to go to work and all that stuff. People started to realize like you could learn quicker, and there's so much other things that the Corona has catalyzed. And if you ask me, I think it was what the collective needed in that moment to really jumpstart this whole shift in consciousness that we hear, whether it's called shift from 3D to 5D, whether it's ascending or ascending, however you want to title it. It played a role in it, and I can see the beauty in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And even the Zoom that we are doing now, we probably wouldn't even have met. I think the spiritual community just flourished online like never before in terms of using Zoom and doing online meditations and online gatherings and online spaces. I think that's how people survived, communicating with their families and their friends, and also expanding these, taking this to a new level with the online spiritual communities. Yeah,
I love that, because as we know, creation or God or whatever term people want to use, it's always expanding and growing. And to take this experience that the online community has definitely blossomed, and now it's going to grow even more. Now these online communities are going to meet in person and create in physical communities. And as you can see, the ripple effect of this I can see this shift, and it's so beautiful to witness.
I agree. It's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, again, like you say, not to take away all the suffering that some people have had to endure. I think it's been a great thing with the Corona. Yeah, maybe it's not politically correct to say it in the general public, but I think we can safely say it. It has definitely had a silver lining.
Well, I love how this is coming back full circle around to what we were sharing in the beginning. Is that it's not that it's wrong of us to say this. It's simply that we have a wider perspective view, or or choosing to view this from the higher self perspective, or however you want to word it, where we can just see the beauty in it. And for those who are not viewing this from that perspective, they're going to possibly hear that comment and being like, they're rude. But the thing is, we're not participating in that anymore. This is just from our perspective, and we're right and you're right. And there's no need to be judging each other. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, and I know you agree with me, that we just see the profoundness and the perfection of all things that take place.
Yeah, and you don't even need to see it from like a spiritual perspective. I think anything in life, it's a choice whether to see the glass half empty or half full. So there's a silver lining to absolutely everything. I remember listening to this British producer from BBC. So a few years ago, he was giving a speech at this convention I was participating in. So he had been a hostage, held hostage during the Iraq war for months by terrorists, and he didn't think he was going to survive. He was just, essentially assured that that was the end of it. But he had access to a radio, and one day, and he was really having a pity party, like he didn't want to, and he wanted to live his life, and here he was stuck with these terrorists, and he didn't know whether he was going to get out alive or not. And then he had access to a radio, so he was listening to BBC World News, and one day there was an interview with a woman who had survived something in Rwanda or Uganda, I don't remember. But they had come and like attacked her village and raped her and killed her baby with a spear, like, atrocities. And he listened to that and he thought, oh my gosh, there's always someone who's in a worse position. Actually, I'm quite comfortable. I have the radio. I get the newspaper. Nobody's beating me. I get food. Like, I'm doing pretty good. And it just shifted his whole experience of what was taking place. And obviously he got out alive to tell the story as well. But I thought that was really very it was a nice perspective, It's a higher perspective, but not necessarily a spiritual one. Yeah.
Well,
and you see that sometimes you hear people that have spent a lifetime in jail, or even Nelson Mandela, my hero. He spent 25 years or something in jail, and many of those were complete isolation. And then he comes out, the walking God that he is, and say, it's like, there's nothing to forgive. I forgive. There's nothing to forgive. Like, move on. Let's get this country together, basically.
Oh, I love that you clarified that even though some of these topics mentioned are spiritual-esque, arguably everything is spiritual, depending on how you look at it, but
Absolutely.
you don't have to view this from a spiritual perspective. It's that half glass, half full. But however you want to title it, it's simply is that what perspective are you choosing to experience or view the situation that you're going through? And that will make a world of difference on whether it's a difficult and struggle one or one filled with grace and ease and fill in the gaps with whatever the circumstances.
Absolutely. I have a friend of mine, she told me not too long ago, I mean, she was severely abused as a child from a very young age, and nobody should have to go through that, And she did trauma therapy and all that, and she came to a place one day where she felt so much pity and compassion towards her predator, who was a relative, and really feeling sorry for him, for sort of choosing to have that, to play that role in her life, and feeling a lot of compassion for him. And I think that flipped everything. And today she's like this amazing, powerful, very intuitive person.
Yeah.
So she was able to flip that and see, collect the wisdom of something that I think for anyone else, we would think it's just horrendous. But she was able to do that and come out, really, truly from a higher perspective.
Well,
forgive to the level that there's nothing to forgive, feeling thankful. She was actually feeling thankful.
Yeah. I think that's what, I mean, there's many things about this, but I think that's one of what's so powerful about hearing the story of Jesus and the whole crucifixion of, I mean, granted, yes, he said, forgive them for they know not what they're doing, but there's, when I hear about forgiveness and all these things we're talking about, like, and going back to like the Christ consciousness is being resurrected on all of us, I've heard them being termed, and this is a linear term, unfortunately, like these are all archetypes of Christ consciousness. And this is why the teachings of Jesus was like, learn to forgive, learn to be unconditional loving. These are all, when embodied, you're starting to resurrect the Christ consciousness within. And I think this is why we find stories like this so powerful and so motivating, if you will, because there's something inside of us that knows that this just resonates because this is who I am.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Jesus is such a beautiful being,
Mhm.
and who definitely wasn't Christian. He would have probably tossed him out of the temple again. It's like, oh, you got it all wrong.
That's so funny.
I know, I know. It is fascinating. Do you know that there's actually another ex-Mormon as well who's on this train? Uh, he's, he's what's his name now? Ryan Melchizedek, and he calls himself Christ Ryan Melchizedek, no, Chris or Christ or something. Christ,
Mm.
like Kryst,
Ah,
Ryan Melchizedek. And he's all
interesting.
into like he's with you know Richard Melchizedek.
No, no. You have to.
Okay, well, anyway, so he's all like I mean, it's you. I crack up because it's hard to look at him and not crack up. But
Yeah,
he's all about he has so much energy, you know. It's like
yeah.
then he's doing all the light language and his hands and moving and in and out of languages and talking. He's like a younger guy. He's probably in his, I don't know, late 20s or something.
Yeah. Well, that's so fascinating that you would bring that up. I mean, you're just sprouting up so much conversations. I feel like we can just talk forever, but what I'll share is, interestingly, what I've come to find is that when you take a, you know, how right now it's called Christianity and Christ, spelled Christ, where I guess when you break down the origins, and you know, maybe we can get more into this on another time, or you know, I can share what I've come across. But the origins is Christ, Kryst, and there's more to that name that's even shortened. And when you break down what it means, if I remember correctly, it translates to like um, love, light, oneness, or something like that.
Okay.
And so it's interesting that you share that guy, maybe he's come across the same materials or somehow intuitively he knows about this, but it's interesting to start to see that, you know, the different layers at which the religion has really put into the manipulation. And I guess maybe this is considered mysticism of religion, but either way, um, it's just I think it's like wanting to know the truth, but then there is no truth. But I don't know. All that's just fast. That's just a fascinating topic to me.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It is. It is. And if we take it like one step further, like there's a meaning to any, like there's a meaning to everything. I think it is interesting to see. I mean, we are a minority. Even you are a minority over there, and the
Yeah.
Mormonism at large is a minority. And it's interesting, I find, to see the ones that sort of step out of Mormonism and embrace some sort of spirituality. Even Esther Hicks, you know, Abraham Hicks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's an ex-Mormon.
Mm.
Did you know she was raised in Park City? When I see somebody's from Utah, I'm like, so I saw she's from Park City. I'm like, wait a minute. So I like do all my little Googling and this and that. I'm like, yeah, she was even married in the temple with her first husband. So she was really
Ooh.
raised in the church.
Yeah.
And this Ryan as well. I mean, I think he's from Salt Lake or something. And then of course I do the Googling and
Yeah.
yeah, on Facebook, I think. And then I like some look at its relatives. You see like the Christ or the temple on the wall, and so you get the picture. It's
That's so
Tevens are.
funny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's such gratitude for what we've experienced because as you just shown, like what a catalyst that experience of being in the control and manipulation of Mormon, how it's launched us to be who we are now. I mean, arguably that's when I think about 3D or the third dimension, like that's polarity, right? We came here to experience the darkness so we can really appreciate and know what the light is. Because if we were just in light the whole time, how will we know what light is? So I'm in awe to this whole experience, the good times, the bad times, the third
Yeah.
dimensional
Yeah.
perspective, everything. And but that being said, I'm especially since I resonate with reincarnation, I know I've had my fair share of it, and I'm ready to uh, ascend higher to higher dimensions to get, you know, to be more aligned with unconditional love, oneness, unity, all that good stuff, and shift from the third dimensional perspective to the higher ones.
Yeah, I agree. It's all fascinating.
Let me ask you, so as you further, kind of shifting gears here, as you further come out of the closet, is there anything that you find that I can already, by hearing you share your story, I can kind of already see it, but is there anything that you kind of have in mind of what your service would look like?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to hear your perspective on that, since you had some thoughts.
Yeah. But first, let me hear, is there anything that's been on your heart or something that you felt like you can, go ahead.
I have done so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think my path is that of a teacher and a counselor, perhaps, like giving advice. People do come to me always for advice. Yeah, maybe inspirational speaker if I sort of am willing to step up there. For that to happen, I probably would need to write that book that I'm sort of supposed to be writing and sometimes do about my life, my life's experiences through a spiritual lens.
Maybe if this is chosen to be used, this video goes viral and people are like, come speak about this. We are trying to get out of this Mormonism thing too, or we're trying to get out of this Catholicism too. Like, we would love to hear it. You're so fascinating to talk. Please share your wisdom. And then there you go. There's the train of you being a motivational speaker.
Well, the thing is, like, I do feel that I ought to have written that book earlier about growing up, because to me, I think it's a cult.
Yeah.
But I know that jars with a lot of people, and I think that if you look neutrally, there's a bite model of cults. If you do the bite model, like the crossing of you can choose a different, I don't know if you there's a bite, Stephen Basson's or something, has a bite model of cult, and then you can sort of cross out what resonates and not, and then you can see on the scale of being a cult or not, because it's like a gradual thing, it's not like this is a cult and this is not. And I think Mormonism definitely is sort of towards a cult. Jehovah's Witness even more so, Scientology possibly even more so. It's definitely in that specter, if you look at it neutrally. But I think because I was so indoctrinated, I would argue that I was raised in a cult. Maybe you were not. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it was so brainwashed. I was actually listening to the old ladies talking about their visitations by the devil, and like physical experience, that they overwhelmed by the darkness and they used their last powers to pray to God, and then the light came and all that. I mean, it's like, for me, it was like physically real.
Yeah.
And I physically was expecting tomorrow or next week, the last days starting and us being persecuted. I was like physically believing in all this, right? And it was really, it's been for me to sort of unwind of that. It was really like those 17 years of my life. It took a lot of time. It's still today, it's the hardest decision I ever made in my life to leave the church, because the way I was raised, the only ones who went to outer darkness was the ones who knew the truth and discarded it, basically Mormons. So if I left the church and was wrong, I would go to outer darkness with the devil, while Hitler didn't, because he didn't know about the church, right?
Right.
So it was quite profound, strong. And I do understand, people have sort of wanted me to do that, and I do understand that if I'd written that book, I could have helped people. It's just that I just never felt like it, because it requires going down in that mess, and I've gone down that mess, cleared that mess so many times, and I just wasn't able to do it. Maybe I was able to do it, and I've done like chapters, but I didn't want to do it against my mother. She's still alive and all that. But I feel now I'm sort of on the other side. I used to have a lot of rage and so towards the church and towards my mother as well, and I saw how much complications it has put on my back, that if I didn't have that, I would have flourished more, I would have followed my natural path. It's like I was so conditioned into following a path that was not my genius and my natural path. Yeah. But I mean, now I'm at a place where I see that it all comes to, it's all meant to be. And I think possibly I was clearing a lot of that stuff by my living it and rebelling it against it and all that, without actually having to go there. I want to write about this from a spiritual place. And then when I write from a spiritual place, you don't have that level of rage. It's you see sort of a purpose for it all.
Right.
And it's also a choice not to go down there, although I do understand that maybe I could have helped on like a 3D level. I could have helped, because I think there's a lot of teachers, people that work with kids who are growing up in cults or in strict religions, and even they don't understand it from that point of view, from the lived experience from a child. But it doesn't really resonate with me. It's too much. But I can see it as part of like my general story, because I have lived a life where I have really gained so much experience. You have that start, right? And also being a divorced child when nobody else was a divorced child, and really I can resonate with you because I was your daughter. You know what I mean? And I can resonate with my poor father, and I resonate with my poor mother, and I can all do that. My grandparents, my parents were both raised on farms, so that closeness to nature. My maternal father, who installed in me this love of trees and land. My paternal father and uncle, his sons, this incredible love of the ocean, which I reconnected with in Croatia with the swimming with the dolphins, that I wasn't quite aware how immense it was. And all my travels and surviving a psychologically abusive relationship, and then being a single mother to a high sensitive child who was really amazing, who is still amazing, who I'm really close to. And then academia, going, like, I've done all this academic stuff, like going to film school at Columbia and then Cambridge. When I went to Cambridge, it was #1 university in the world. Like, it was like every other year, it was like a competition between Harvard and Cambridge being the #1. And the only reason I was there is because I was meant to be there, clearly, because I'm not that smart, And then, of course, this immense imposter syndrome, being at Cambridge, being at Columbia, doing the things that I really was completely out of my comfort zone, totally. Surrounded by all these smart people and all that. And then, teaching, and then basically my life has been a saying of John Lennon: life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. Like, I'm on one path and something happens and whoops, I think I'm going to do this, and then something happened and I go there. It's like inspired action, like inspiration comes or something. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I start going that direction. It's just fascinating. Like so I feel that my life is rich with experience, and I've sort of like I really have been a spirit in having a human experience, in the sense that I have sort of lived through spiritual guidance. So I haven't done much meditation, but it's almost like now I have all this experience to sort of place whatever comes. Oh, now I'm but it's really, it's like I've just done a lot of stuff in my life, and I've done a lot of traveling, and I've done inspired traveling, like the path is made, it's all these like miracles happening, even with Colombia. So when I organized like a student trip when I did film history. I organized a student trip to go to New York. And when we came to New York, when we were driving up, I think it was boulevard, whatever it's called. What is it called? Streets and avenues. So 5th or 6th Avenues in a limo, we were cruising. And then it just hit me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm home. I'm going to live in New York. I was like, complete euphoria. Had no idea why I was going to be in New York. I just knew that I was home in New York and I was going to live in New York. I go back to Norway. I finish my studies. I tell this to a friend, and she's like, yeah, she was psychic. She was there. And I'm like, I have no idea how and why, whatever. But yeah, she said, what about film school? I'm like, oh yeah, film school. Yeah, that resonates. Yeah, okay, film school. So then next year when I'm done with my studies, I was doing documentary directing by then in Norway. I got a grant. So I go to the New York to spend 3 weeks staying with a friend. And my intention is going to all the film schools to find out which one I'm going to apply for. And I went to all, like, they had like an address, but there's nothing there, So like everyone except Columbia, because Columbia was like the rich people's school, and like I had all this prejudice. And then in the end, I was going to go home. And then I thought to myself, well, Fride, you'd said you were going to go to all of them. So, you just go up there. So I went up there. I got into the building. I got into the elevator. I'm taking the elevator up and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to go here. I get to the 5th floor. Every person I meet is like perfect, At all the places I had gone, I hadn't really met the people. I didn't, it didn't resonate.
Yeah.
Came to Columbia, I just met the right people, the right students. They all tell me share what I needed to hear. I even knocked on the door to the dean and asked him if I could get a waiver for the TOEFL test. The TOEFL test is like a language test you as a foreign student need to pass, and it's very strict. But for me to do that, I would have to study something and then go to Oslo for 2.5 hours and take a test, pay loads of money, and then. So I asked him if I could get a waiver, and he says, well, I can clearly you speak English. So he just wrote me a waiver, and that was it. And so, yeah, I got a Fulbright grant. So I was accepted at Columbia. So then I got the Fulbright grant and the government grant and some other grants. I had all the money for the tuition and a little bit pocket money to eat. And that was it. I didn't have money for the rent. So now I have some friends of mine, they were shooting like film. She's a cinematographer, so she's on somewhere, so I can use her studio and sleep there for 2 weeks while finding a place to live. And a friend of mine, he had said that his friend has a mother who's like old and rich. He lives next to Central Park in a huge apartment. Maybe you can live in one of those rooms and keep a little bit company or something. And that was the only thing, like, oh, I'm hoping that's going to work out. And if not, like, I'm clearly supposed to be there because all this is coming together.
Mm-hmm.
So I just go there. And then that doesn't work out. So now I have 2 weeks of lodging and I have no idea what to do because there's like $600, $900 every month for rent. And I don't have it. I don't have it, truly. I don't know what to do. One day I'm in Central Park by the lake. Where they have the little boats, have you seen them?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there writing postcards home, drinking coffee or something, and then this old German lady comes by and wonders if it's free, if she can sit there. I says, okay. I'm a little surprised because there are some people, but there are other tables that there's nobody. But I guess she wanted to strike a conversation. So we start talking. So she says to me, like, are you a tourist? And I'm like, no, I'm a film, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing Columbia. So do you have the place to stay? No, I don't. And she says, okay, so this is what you have to do. You have to go to this office in this street behind Columbia, go down the stairs and ask the woman there. And I think it was like a live-in or some expression. You ask for like available live-in. I don't remember if that's exactly what it was called, but something like that. So I said, okay, next day I go there. And because she says sometimes there's these older people, rich people, they have this apartment, like basically like my friend had said. So I go there and the woman says, well, normally we don't have that, but now we have 2. So I called one of them, which happened to be like 2 blocks from not only Columbia, but 2 blocks from my school building. So I called him. And so there's a man picked up the phone and he said, oh, what a pity. He hears I'm from Norway and this and that. He says, oh, what a pity. We just said yes to somebody else. So we talk a little bit and he says, but would you like to come over for a cup of coffee? My mother, have a chat with my mother. She's very interested in Scandinavia. I said, sure. So I walk over there because it's like walking distance. Mm-hmm. And I come there. And in the meantime, they have called the other person and says, sorry, it didn't work out. And now I come there, I have a place to live.
Whoa.
And now I'm staying, not only am I staying for free, but I actually get paid $100 a month to serve her breakfast in bed around 9:30 before I go to school myself, 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And take her, she has like a housekeeper that comes in, so nothing of that, but I take the her sheets to the cleaner every 2 weeks. And when I shop food for myself, I bring stuff for her. And then every once in a while, we go for a walk in the park. This is right next to Riverside Park with the beautiful, it's like 10th floor in a building with a marble entrance, doorman, 10th floor, beautiful view of the Hudson River. It's like an amazing, and the apartments there now, just like half that size is like $20 million or something. Like something like that. It's like insane. The real estate value of that building is really beautiful. And this woman, she's 84 years old. She was one of the first graduates from Harvard or something in mathematics. I think she was the first one who ever got a degree in mathematics from Harvard, something like that. I read it in the obituary. I didn't even know. But she had been a teacher of logic at Columbia, and she published her first book, which was Introduction to Logic and Philosophy, at the age of 81. And it was used at Columbia for the introductional course of logic and philosophy. So she was amazing. And then there was another lodger there as well, who would be there 5 days a week. She was a 75-year-old woman from Ukraine, who had, during Second World War, had been, her village had been erased, and she had been brought to a work camp, like, concentration camp, but a German work camp in Poland. After, to make that story shorter, she was, her whole village and family was evaporated, right? So she ended up, after the war, to go to Paris, work for an American lady as a housekeeper. And when she returned to the States, so she enabled her to come with her. And then she went to Columbia and studied. And now, at age 75, she was teaching morning classes in physical education at Columbia. Go figure. This amazing woman. And 20 years after she had come to the States, she found out that her mother survived, her siblings survived, her nephew, she had like a whole family in Ukraine that she reconnected with, and that she was now, the money that she was earning, she was sending to them, because Ukraine was in a very bad spot. This was in 2000. So I was staying there with this incredible two women and being paid $100 a month and for free, So this is like the story of my life. I get way out of the comfort zone. I feel I'm supposed to do something. I have no idea how it's going to manifest, and then it just does.
I love that story, and it just goes to show like how much you've been in the flow, even before, like we talk about like wake before we wake up, becoming more conscious of our reality. But even if before we wake up, and I'm not sure whether or not you were awake or not then, but it is so beautiful to reflect on like how perfectly things were kind of aligned for you.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I don't even know if I'm awake now. Like, I've never had an awakening, sort of. I don't know, it's like, when did you, like Todd Medina, he would ask people, so where did you have an awakening, or were you always this weird? And I've thought to myself, what would I reply? I don't know. It's like, I don't even know if I'm awakened.
Well, on that note, I would say this. You know how usually people only learn when they hit rock bottom, whether they get divorced or they become a drug addict and they've lost all their friends, and then they turn around. I feel like equating that to, some people have that experience they call an awakening because they hit rock bottom. At least for me, that's how it was. But you didn't need that rock bottom experience. So you don't have a quote unquote awakened experience, but yet you're on the same trajectory as if you are awakened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like I've always had like a separate, like a one spiritual life and one, like it's been like this,
Yeah.
If anything, if I had possibly an awakening, because, I thought I became like an atheist at age 17 to leave the church.
Right.
But really, that's when I started embracing astrology, because, of course, that was all devil's stuff, right? I mean, if the war was imagine, like psychics and astrology, all that was very dangerous. But I embraced astrology, I think within months after leaving the church, which of course, as an atheist, that wouldn't resonate. So that's I'm like, I was a fairly bad atheist. Because that sort of, so I've always been alternative.
Yeah.
And then when my grandmother died, my father's mother died, who I was very close to, she was like the one unconditional love person in my life, Like, I don't think I could do anything wrong. It was just, I was her only grandchild, and yeah, love, love, love around the clock. Beautiful person. So I was living in Amsterdam then, but I was visiting Norway, and it was about 8 hours drive, the distance to the fjords where she lived. And we were going to leave the next day, and my aunt called and said that grandma is hospital. And then I just felt that if I go back to Amsterdam now, maybe I'll never see her alive again. And that was, horrible to think of. So we sort of postponed our trip one day to return. And then I flew up there, and I sat with her that afternoon, and the evening was really amazing. And then we had to leave because she was sharing room. And the next morning, I had to return to South because we had to go back to Amsterdam. So I only had like 20 minutes window to see her last time in my life, And when we got there, she was then in coma, so she was really gone. And within those 20 minutes, she died, as if she was just waiting for me and my aunt to come back. I was present. It still gives me goosebumps because I was present. I held her hand when she died. And it was incredibly moving and beautiful experience because she was not there, but when she had died, I felt her. It was this euphoria. It was like so good riddance, so happy to be rid of this old, useless, bedridden body. So I became so euphoric for her. And like, I couldn't even be sad for her passing, although I was, because I was so happy for her. And that really tossed the whatever left over from the atheism, because then I just knew there's something afterwards, and there's nothing to be worried about. It's just amazing. It completely transformed my relationship with death as well. And so I think that was part of the spiritual awakening. And I've had, you have some rock bottoms and this and that, but it's just like building on it.
Yeah. And
I felt this guidance throughout my life, although I didn't necessarily know it. And sometimes it's like this core, but then you get to the left or the right, and then you sort of like narrow it back down again.
You are a profound being. I'm so excited that you're coming out of the spiritual closet, and however that manifests, it's going to be it's so needed. And again, I can't say enough how grateful I am that our paths have crossed, and I'm very looking forward to further conversations, because I literally had to stop myself and try to, because everything you brought up, like I can go here, I can go here, I can go here, and I want to ask you this, I want to ask you this, but then here we are 2 hours in, and I feel like we're not even scratching the surface. So with all that being said, I just want to say that I have so much love for you, and thank you so much for this conversation. And I look forward to the next time. I would love to have you on again.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye.